I want you to tell me a little bit about like what does Islam say about the ego? What is the ego, and what should we know about it?
Great. Yeah, so I think obviously we can go into different thing, and that kind of brings us to the first chapter, where basically the book starts with understanding your state, understanding who you are, and understanding who you are in terms of your Lord, right? So I think from a spectrum perspective, there's two different variations of it, like between you and Allah, and also between you and creation, right? And then perhaps you can add a third stream, which is between you and your own self, right? So your expectations of
Mm,
your own self, what you allow yourself to do, and what level of expectations you want to set for yourself. So I think these three relationships are definitely important to keep in mind. So obviously we want to start with, first and foremost, understanding who you are, who we are in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the idea is that, look, the all complete power and authority and being like totally, without any need is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He is al-Ghani, right? And understanding that who we are basically al-Faqir, the one who is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see that, right? So you have a child, newborn, and you see that he's weak, she's weak, and they're totally dependent on their parents for everything, food and whatnot. However, as we keep growing, that's when we start saying, oh, it's me, and I can do this, and I want to be like, independent and self-sufficient, what have you. And those things could be really, really good if you are keeping it in terms of your own self, right? So between you and other people. However, when we start thinking and we just removing all barriers, and we start thinking the same thing between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when it kind of becomes challenging.
I mean, when it comes to the ego specifically, one of the things that we start thinking about, that I think about a lot, is where the ego actually started. And the first occurrence of the ego for me was when you start hearing about Shaitan, and you
Mhm.
start hearing about his whole experience of, seeing Adam alayhi salam and then being asked to prostrate. Would you say that ego had a lot of things to do with that whole rejection of the sujood and rejecting Allah and all of that?
Yeah, that's fantastic, and that's really very beautiful, right? So see, now his situation, or that action was coming from a decision, or I think a blessing that was given, or an honor that was given to Adam alayhi salam, right? So that wasn't something that was in his control, sort of, right? And then he was so unhappy about that decision that Allah has given. What I'm trying to emphasize as well is that when it comes to him himself, or us ourselves, then we could have that higher level of expectation that, look, I cannot, miss this, or I have to put in that much effort and what have you. But then there are the results, right? The end results of, like, maybe you're working really, really hard, or you're trying to do something. However, someone that you think of competitor, or someone that you think of as equal, right? Then Allah gives him or her more, right? He raises him or her more in any sort of thing, right? More status, more wealth, more power, more popularity. Now what? Right? How do you react? That's the thing, because then you take Allah out of the picture, you take that blessing, that decision from Allah out of the picture, and then boom, right? It's like, okay, I can't accept that, and that messes up your relationship with Allah, and so on and so forth.
So in a way, like when we look at the situation of Shaitan, we kind of see that one of the things we see from it is that the ego kind of prefers it itself, right? The ego gives you as a person, yourself, preference, and it kind of fools you into, I guess, making bad decisions, coming to wrong conclusions, and I guess gives you more importance than you actually have, right? Like obviously, as
Mhm.
human beings, we all have this natural thing that we want to survive and we want to be alive and all of these things. But at the same time, the ego can really, really lead you away, because if in that moment he had thought, well, you know what, me and Adam are the same, and Allah has honored him, and Allah's asking me to do this, maybe he would have done it, right? But instead, the vibe that he went on was, I am above. Like me, I'm above this person or this creation.
Yeah.
And that aboveness, it kind of ruins us. And like you said, kind of like a lot of the times when I think about ego, I think when you are like engaging your ego fully, it is closer to shaitan. It's closer to that way of thinking that, I'm above everything. And that includes Allah, right? So if I have a blessing that Allah's given me, and then I start to think, oh yeah, it's me, like I'm really good at this and I'm really good at this. And so what you do is you start to give yourself more importance than you actually have.